Hello, welcome to the March 8th, 2022 Club Cubase live stream. I'm going to do a quick audio test and then we'll go ahead and get started. So bear with me just for a second. Hello, welcome. Okay, so everything sounds fine on my monitoring computer. My name is Greg Undo. I work for Yamaha Corporation of America as a Steinberg product specialist. And I'm based in the United States, just outside of Washington, D.C. area in Alexandria, Virginia. If you have not attended a live stream before, how it works is you could ask questions in the live chat or submit questions in advance by emailing clubcubase@steinberg.de. And we will try to get through as many questions as we can today. We'll do it in as succinct and as complete manner as possible. But we should have all of the topics covered in today's live stream, indexed with timestamps. We'll go through and do the index with all the topics covered. And that will be pinned to the top of the comments field, so you could kind of navigate quickly to look for particular topics. And also just reading through a couple questions here as I'm trying to talk, and I'm not multitasking well. All right. And if you wanted to search for topics that have been covered on previous live streams, you may want to go to Jan's website, which is cubaseindex.com, and you could search for topics that have been covered there. We have two people that serve as moderators, Agent K and Jazz Dude. So they're not Steinberg employees; they're just doing this out of the kindness of their heart. And to make it a better community. So we want to give special thanks to them. And another wonderful resource of information is the Cubase Nation Discord. And Jazz Dude does a lot of work to compile information for that. So we'll give special thanks to Jazz Dude for that as well. But let's go ahead and take a quick look at... Okay. So I saw a question that didn't make it when I transferred over to the chat. So I think that this is the same one. So in Very Audio 3, I cannot hear in real time the notes that I'm editing. I thought the version was not ready, but obviously it is. So what can I do? Thanks a lot. So if you wanted to hear the notes as you move them within the Very Audio editor, we will come over and we'll just choose to edit Very Audio. You want to make sure, one, that you have the control room activated directly in. So I think you'll need the control room activated. So you could just come right over to, not to there, but we'll go to our audio connections and then make sure that you have your control room activated and probably output set to not activated. So I will just change that. And you want to also make sure that you have this little icon here, which is the acoustic feedback. So you'll just come. So without that icon on, as we go to move notes, I could now just come right over here. Without that icon on, we don't hear notes. So make sure that you have the acoustic feedback turned on. And then if you have the control room, then you should be able to hear the notes. It's probably this if you had it on and it's now not working. So just check this particular icon. Okay, so we have a question. Hi, Greg. I'm singing over a backing track, which is a bit fast. I used sizing applies time stretch to the track, but when I resized the track and vocals, the alignment goes out. Any tips? Thanks. So if if you have just a backing track and then you're trying to resize everything, you're probably better to, instead of resizing the events to time stretch the events, instead of that take the backing tracks and make sure that, one, you're going to be in, that you're going to be actually in the, so as you're working with that you're going to be in musical mode. So you want to probably, put the track into musical mode so you could select the events here. And if you know kind of what the actual events are at that point. You could just come over and change the tempo, and then if all the tracks are in musical mode, you could slow down the tempo, speed it up. If you're doing time stretching, that, you know, as you time stretch events, it's not going to necessarily correlate unless they're all the same length. So I would just place them into as you find out what the tempo is, the root tempo, and then just come over to put it into musical mode, slow down the tempo, record your part, and then the parts that you record will be placed into musical mode, and then from there, where you could actually have it where you could speed it up. So I wouldn't, if I was just wanting to slow down a track, I would put it in musical mode and change the tempo as opposed to time stretching it that way, because the scale between the audio backing track and your vocals probably won't line up that way. All right, so we have a question from Alex Morgan. Hi, Greg. He's just saying, love, Cubase 12, wow. Could you assist me with a Project Logical Editor preset to hide all muted tracks, MIDI folder, FX, etc.? All right, so let's say we have a number of elements here. So let's say if I have different parts that are muted, like effects, tracks, now what we could do is I'm just going to mute some different parts here. And we'll have an effects track that's going to be muted. So let's build a logical editor preset to mute the tracks, or let me just make sure to hide all of the tracks. So let's come over here to our project logical editor setup. So what we want to do is first we're going to, in our process, we're going to choose select. Let's go to our filter target, and I want to say our container type is equal to track. We'll click insert again, and we will say the property is set to event is muted. And here what I want to do is go to my channel and visibility agents, and I'll say hide selected channel. So what we're going to do is select all of our containers. So all of our container types are tracks. So we're going to select all of our tracks where the property is set to the event is muted. So we'll come here. We have a number of tracks that are muted, and we'll have our visibility tab here. So if it's hidden, we can see that it will become unchecked. So now we'll just come right there, and now the tracks that were muted are automatically hidden, just like that. So that's all you have to do. So if you wanted to, again, first we want to select tracks where the property is set to is muted, and then on the post-process commands, come over to channel and track visibility and select hide selected. So give that a shot. Okay, so we see a question from Ed Rugman. Hi, Greg. Wonder if you could test for me if the tape machine monitoring mode works whilst trying to record on an audio track that already has an ARA extension on it. I still get an audio dropout message. All right, so let me just jump to a different project here. Okay, so we'll just okay, so now if we come here, we have that, and let's see if we don't have any input source to monitor, but let me just go ahead and I'll just create a quick source here. Okay, so it's probably the message that you're seeing, the audio dropout detected. So let me, so it may be like if you're doing like ARA editing that you'd want to do the recording on the track, but let's see if we can if it's actually recording. So I'm going to take this track and let's add a group channel to this. Okay, and we're going to make it a stereo group. And for this input, we want it to be the group input. So let's say if we all right, so it looks like that recorded and monitored, and then the file just kind of went away. So I will kind of pass that along, but it's, I would probably, want to do all of my recording before I started doing ARA extensions. But I will kind of mention that as a potential workflow issue that could come up. Thanks for pointing it out, Ed. All right, so we see Best Korean Jesus checking in from San Diego, and Tron checking in from Norway. Okay, just reading through different comments. So, so you see just like from GOT from Got Your, or so I'm just kind of seeing maybe the like maybe part of the question came in before the chat. So I was hoping 12 would fix this, but it hasn't. Is there a way for the mixer for it to default what is shown? For example, my filter section being shown and my EQ and my strips off also. Have things like notepad and pictures turned off. Never seems to remember what I want it to do. So let's go ahead and take a look at the mixer here. So I think this could be maybe something, and I make sure if I'm understanding. I think I'm missing the very first part of the question. But if you have, like with where the mixer is, sorry about that. So I'm not sure if you're saving these as configuration. So let's say if I wanted to see my inserts and sends, if this is going to be right, so let's see if we now come here. Let's say we'll get to insert and send. So, so I'm not sure if you're saving this as a particular, if you're saving it as a configuration, a visibility configuration to kind of show your different areas. But let's say if I wanted to now see my channel strip, and I want to see the compression. So let's say if we just toggle back and forth between those two views. So, we could set up stuff like that, but maybe if you give me a little more context of, since it seems like the first part of your question was cut off, so I apologize for that. All right, so we see Sir Robert from Atlanta. All right, and we see Sir Robert saying like button is activated. All right. So you see, will you stop selling products in Russia like everyone else? Stop support terrorists. So I don't think that I'm not sure if they've gotten their Cubase 12 shipment, because there may be sanctions or something. But I'm not privy to all the international stuff that's going on. So. Okay, so we have a question. Is it possible to save and recall a plug-in chain on the master bus? Can it be done with input channels as well? So let's go take a look at our master bus. So if I wanted to come over here, let's say, okay, it's... Okay, so we'll see. All right, and so we'll just try this. I think it should work as normal preset. So we'll load an effects chain preset. So we say Taylor Master, and then that could be loaded up. And let's take a look at input channels and see if we could do it on input channels as well. So yeah, we could just have different effects chain presets for input channels and master channels. Okay, so we just see question, is it possible to duplicate commands in the logical editor, such as inside bar range for multiple positions instead of having to set each parameter each time you add a new filter target? Okay, so let's say if we wanted to do this for the logical editor, what a lot of people miss with this Taylor is, let me just create some blank MIDI parts here so I can open the logical editor. Okay, so if you wanted to like select everything that's like, you know, on beats 1, 2, and 3 and 4, like on beats 1, 2, 3, 4, we could just come over here. We'll say, okay, we're going to select the notes. And if you wanted to do this within one particular master, one particular logical editor preset, we'll come over here and we'll say position, and I'll just do like 4 positions. Okay, and then I'm going to just say for positions, we're going to choose inside bar range for all of these. So, and when we see the Boolean condition here, so we want to say notes, and we can say switch these to OR. So we could now just say, okay, I want these around beat 1, around beat 2, around beat 3, and around beat 4. So this way we could have one preset that you could have multiple conditions, multiple positions set, so you don't have to do each one of these positions at once. And you want to make sure that this Boolean condition is set to OR, because otherwise it would only select notes that are here, 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 and here, which probably wouldn't make much sense. So you want to say, I want to select notes that are here, or here, or here, or there, if you wanted to set up multiple timestamps. Okay, so you see a question. So when I change preferences or add user presets, does it update my profile automatically, or do I have to update it each time I make a change? So it doesn't update it automatically. So the profile manager will export whatever your particular preferences are set to at that particular moment. So it doesn't dynamically update your preferences. So it's at the point of exporting the profile. So you need to save it every time you want it to export, or if you made changes to preferences. Okay, so I see, hi Greg, question. When I move the cursor further in the project post where I detected chords, it seems to always play the last chord that was posted on the chord track when I hit play. The monitor and record button are activated. Okay, so yeah, sometimes what it will do is try to chase the events. So if you put a chord in, it may chase that particular chord if it's off screen and you hit play. Let's see if there's a preference for that. I mean, you could just click on disable acoustic feedback during playback if you wanted to. But otherwise it will try to chase, and let's see. I don't think there's anything in the chase events here that would do that. So it may try to chase the events to make it kind of work for you automatically with that. So and that's helpful in a lot of situations, but you could always just, if you have a chord track, just mute the chord track if you wanted to. Okay, so you just see a question. Why is it sometimes I can group my effects channels and other times I cannot? It's random. I noticed that some of my older songs that allowed it, I can get it to take all of my effects and group them. So it could be like when you add, when you add different effects. Let me jump to, or if I go to add like effects channels. So one thing that might be causing it is, let's say I add, if we choose to create it inside the folder, so that places it in the effects channels folder. So if I wanted to add another effects channel, and let's say if I add an effects channel and we'll put it outside of the folder, we'll come over here. All right, I'll put it outside the folder this time. So we have 3 outside or 3 inside the folder, and I'll create 1 outside. So now if like these are grouped together, so if we wanted to come and group these, so it could be that, see if you have a difference if the effects are inside the effects channel folder or outside of the folder, where it'll place it below the last selected track, and see if that makes sense. So it could be like as you're adding your effects channel tracks, like this choice of inside outside folder, see if that has a correlation with the behavior. Alexander Plasko says, push the like button or centipedes will crawl on your face while you sleep. So that might be a little extreme. So. Okay, so we see, hey, Greg, could you show how to manage MIDI channels in the MIDI remote manager? Is it possible to have the MIDI channels be assigned to different presets? Thank you. So it's really, when we're in the MIDI remote manager, it's really kind of whatever is captured here. So, like as you go into the script editor, it's just going to, capture a particular MIDI message. So if I just wanted to come here, let's put a button, and as I would just hit, different MIDI messages, whatever channel that is on, we could use that to indicate what channel that particular event is responding to and following. So, you could have those set up. And I guess that you could, and just make sure I'm reading this right. So, you have different MIDI channels assigned to different presets. So, you could, if it's kind of set up to scroll through different things, you could have different channels, but it's really kind of whatever is being captured here. So, think of it, I think it might be the use of it. You might utilize more of, like a single function for a particular function, for, a single MIDI note or MIDI message on a channel for a particular function, as opposed to kind of dynamically mapping. But I'm not sure if you wanted to, what presets you wanted to change. You could have, any of the buttons like navigate through presets if you wanted to, but, or if you wanted to have presets of the remote control. So if you could let me know that would be great. All right. So we have Frank checking in from Kingston, Canada. And just to follow up to Best Green Jesus' question, I have to create additional knobs and faders for different MIDI channels, making it cluttered. There must be a better way to handle the different MIDI channels. Think of each function is going to be sent from a particular, each of these is going to be a particular MIDI message on a MIDI channel, on my personal system. And, I have just a really large, like a Stream Deck where I mapped out like 900 functions. So I wasn't necessarily worried about kind of the physical layout of it, because, it's kind of like nested folders. So, a lot of people will think of it as one level as kind of being mapped to different functions here. And if your controller has more functions, it may just, have a physical knob. And if you, like, as you go to add in different controllers, if it's too cluttered for you or you're not, seeing enough, like as we go to click, just come over here and you could resize each one as well. So you could have it be very small if you needed to have, like 128 parameters on this one particular row if you wanted to. So Miller Brown just saying, hi, Greg and Cubasers. Happy 12. So it's very kind. Thanks. Great to see you on the live stream. And we have Stefan checking in from Sweden and Alexander Plasko from Connecticut. We have Ali checking in, saying hi to everyone. And we have Soren in Sweden. chat field jumped on me, so. Let me just find my spot where it was. All right, so I'm in the neighborhood where I was. All right, so. All right, so we see a question about the MIDI remotes. Is there any plans for more scripts? My controller is Novation Impulse 61. Alternatively, can you recommend an exchange location for user-created scripts? Thanks. So, I think a lot of the companies are making the particular controllers. I know Steinberg has reached out to most of the MIDI controller companies already, and they've been in talks with them. And since they know their controllers very well, that they'll be able to do that. But I think that there may be kind of like a sharing repository, maybe, and that seems like something that would be a great use of the Cubase Nation Discord to be able to find different scripts like that for controllers. So I think that's where it'll be naturally, and as time goes on, that these will just be coming inside of Cubase, so that when you connect your controller, that's kind of automatically seen and configured, so the user doesn't have to worry about it or downloading different scripts. So it's obviously just out for a few days, and we've seen a lot of interest in it. All right, and we see Jan from Stockholm on the live stream. All right, so great seeing. We see Jazz Dude on as well from Germany. All right, so I see question. When I try to add a sidechain with MIDI trigger on FX modulator volume, it makes noise, not clicking. You can fix clicking, changing nodes. So is it the plugin or me is doing it wrong? All right, so let's take a look. Just activate this project here quickly. Okay, so let's say we'll come over here to our FX modulator. All right, so what I want to do now is, all right, so let's say we're going to open up our FX modulator here. All right, so I have this one kind of all set up. So it's a, all right, so let's say I have, so I'm going to activate from sidechain to MIDI input. I will come right over and I'll set my MIDI input here. So let's say we're going to now play this. And as I have my volume envelope here, I send a MIDI note message. All right, I'm gonna make sure I'm in the right modulator here, so. So I'm going to have this is my MIDI track. This MIDI track is now going out to the pad to that. So now when I play the MIDI message here, we'll have the pad play. So I'm just going to set my output down here. So now when I come here, so it seems to be kind of working as expected. But let me know if that's what you're doing with that to make it work. All right, and we have Scambot Terminator checking in from Wisconsin. Thanks for joining in the live stream today. And Kerwin Young checking in from Atlanta. And Benny from Sweden. All right, we see Michael Pierce. Just thanking me for the Cubase 12 intro on Friday. So that was a lot of fun to do. All right, we have Guido checking in from Argentina and Uno Memento from Finland. We see Mark Rabin from Montana. All right, so we see, hi Greg, will Loop Mash come back to Cubase in a future update or any replacement better than Loop Mash? I miss it a lot and use it a lot. So I think the reason it was removed is one, we didn't own kind of the source code and didn't have access to that. And it wasn't ever going to be updated for like Apple M1 processors. So that's why one of the main reasons it was removed. I've seen online people taking kind of on Windows, if you're not running an Apple M1 in native mode, of kind of taking the VST synth set over, copying it over, and having it work. So I've seen people do that, but that's kind of why some of the instruments were removed, is because we don't have the ability to actually update those for, new technologies and new operating systems and processors. So I'm sure if you do a search, you can find a way to maybe copy a file over to have it in your system. All right, so we see, hello, Greg. Will they add in LUFS or volume dB control for exporting from Cubase Pro versions? I'd asked this before, but it was never added in. Can you get them to add it in this feature? So I can't get features added in. I can always suggest and do that. It is part of Nuendo. But what most people will do is just simply do an export, take the exported file that you have, and at that point go to the audio to processes. And when you go to normalize, you could just now normalize via a particular LUFS level. So if you wanted to do that, so it's kind of a two-step process as opposed to exporting. In Nuendo, we come over here to your export audio mixdown and choose a particular LUFS value for that. So in Cubase, it's a two-step process, but I'll make sure to mention that people are looking for that in Cubase as well. Some of those things, as you can see, some of the Cubase 12 features have been, migrated down from Nuendo 12 or Nuendo, not 12, but, current versions of Nuendo where it makes sense. All right, we see Robbie Bowling from Dallas, Texas. Thanks for joining us today. See a nice comment from Tim Weinheimer. Thanks, Greg, for the Cubase 12 walkthrough. It was so helpful. Thank you for your help. It's so valuable. Glad to help. There's a lot of new things for people to learn. All right, so we see from Matt Smith, is there a few clicks way to move all of my lane takes to existing tracks. I see the create new tracks from lanes, but often I want to move them to tracks that I already have set up. Insert bus wise. So let's take a look. Let me open up a different project here quickly. Okay, so let's say now at this point, so if you're not familiar with this, if we have a bunch of lanes, we could select, let's see if we do just one lane. Okay, so at this point I could select a particular lane, and if we come here, we can say, create tracks from lanes. So now I have this particular track here. So let's say if I wanted to move it to this audio file. There is move events to selected track. So as soon as you do that, so it could be a two-step process. So let's say if I'm here and I want to, we'll say create tracks from that lane. We do that, and I now want it to, so I could select the event. Let's say I have this, then you go to edit and just keyboard shortcuts, but you can say move events to selected track, and that will move it to a selected track. And so you could give that a try. All right, we see Michael Teams from Weatherford, Texas. He's saying it's cold today there. So he's just outside of Dallas. All right, so we see, hey Greg, Midi Remote is one of the coolest new features. However, learning resources are limited. Any plans to do a Midi Remote deep dive session? So I did kind of a 10-minute video on Midi Remote stuff, and Steinberg hasn't posted it yet. So I did kind of a number of walkthrough videos for Cubase 12 that haven't been published to the YouTube channel yet. So, but we could spend time kind of going over it. A lot of times you just have to play with it and kind of, but if you have particular questions, please feel free to ask. But there will be, I know that there's videos that are just kind of waiting a description to be generated by the Steinberg team that will walk through kind of, like how to get, like I set up a whole Nectar controller from scratch for it, and I think that a lot of those things will work. So maybe in the next day or two, those other videos will be posted. Okay, so we see, is there a way to apply the same Vari audio tuning to multiple takes at once? How about the same for timing with audio warp? So with Vari audio, it's going to be on an individual track level. But if you want it to do, since Cubase 12, we can do warping on multiple levels, on multiple tracks. So really all you have to do is just open up a particular project here. I'll activate this project. All right, so if we wanted to warp on multiple tracks, I could select them. And let's go to our free warp tool. And then really all we have to do is, once we have warp markers that are populated, and we could do that based on hit points by going audio to real-time processing, create warp markers from hit points. So if I wanted to take multiple parts and warp them together, we can now do this very easily. So whether it's 8 tracks or 2 tracks together, we could just come right over there and warp. But Very Audio is tied directly into like the individual file. So as we do editing, it's doing it on the individual file so that it doesn't necessarily translate to doing it to multiple files simultaneously. But we can now warp multiple files simultaneously in the project window or within the sample editor. Okay, so we see feature requests for certain things in preference as key commands like enable record MIDI selected and preview channel and phones. So he changes those all the times. So we'll take a look, make sure they're not in there already. All right, so let's say if we... All right, so we have a key command right here for use phones channel as preview channel. And when we go to enable record on selected MIDI track and audio track, so both of those features, let me just make sure I have it correct. Okay, so so it says the feature request for future certain things and preferences is key commands like enable record on selected MIDI and preview. So I change those things throughout my session. So they're already available as keyboard shortcuts, and you could use those to drive directly into your MIDI remote control if you wanted to set that up. But there are keyboard shortcuts available for those already. All right, so we see Michael Teams has started dispensing his virtual ice cream. All right, so just see a question. How do I change the color of the top bar that you have from red to blue? So I'm not sure which top bar it is. So Benny, if you could, I realize it was probably something I had open previously, but if you want to just tell me like what top bar area that you want to see change colors, that'd be helpful so I can have a little more context as to what parts you want to change. All right, so you just see warning to all Mac users, Cubase 12 won't install unless it's OS X 10.15. It's a waste of money upgrading if you're on the earlier OS version. So, all right, so we see Luca just, I think, retracted his message saying he would like to see about the preference that was already there for the key commands. All right, so I just see. Hi, Greg. Can NI Studio be used as a controller? So I'm not sure if that's like if it's the the keyboard controllers. I thought they were complete controls, or if it's going to be as long as anything that transmits MIDI information can be used as a controller. But if so, let me know, Greg, if it's what the NI Studio is. I think there's the Machine series of kind of drum controllers and instruments, as well as the complete controls, and those could obviously be used as MIDI controllers. But anything that kind of transmits MIDI information will be able to automatically be used as a controller inside of Cubase. Okay, so I see a question. I have Supervision as the first insert slot on my stereo out bus. Comes after my mix bus. Is there a way to create a macro that opens Supervision? So instead of maybe doing it from a macro, so let's say I have it here in my control room. So what I'm going to do is just save this as a workspace. So I'll say, let's add a workspace. I'll do it as a project workspace, and I'll just say, we'll call it VU. So instead of opening up the plugin, once the plugin is open, let's see if we save as a workspace now. We go back to workspaces, and I go to VU. And then, we could trigger that particular workspace with a key command. And basically see your Supervision plugin as you want. So instead of saying go to this track, go to insert one and open the effect editor. Once the effect editor is open, just go to workspaces and save a workspace, and then you could hit a keyboard shortcut to recall Supervision and have it automatically open as you want. Okay, just reading through some comments. So we see how to balance instruments with respect to vocal, or what is the best dB balance for both. Every single song is going to be different, and it's not necessarily volumes. And if you think of like, oh, the vocal is going to be 3 dB louder than the instruments, it's not going to be just like a formula like that. So it's going to be the frequencies that are involved in that particular instrument are going to make a huge difference. And also, what's going on harmonically, as a person, some people's, their vocal will cut through better. Sometimes a microphone will make someone's voice, sound louder in the mix when it's the same volume as a different microphone, because it's accentuating different frequencies. So there's no real, vocals need to be 3 dB louder than instruments. It's never going to work like that. And it's going to be different on every single song. So. All right, so we see Jazz Dude installed his Logitech G600 mouse today for remote controlling Project Logical Editor commands. That's great. Okay, so we see a question. After fighting Google to fix, they broke in my email, YouTube, etc. My favorites are missing. Would you be so kind as to demonstrate again Nuendo video slicing macros based on audio hit points? Okay, so. Okay, so let me just go to a different project. Okay, so we'll just go ahead and add a video track here. See if I can remember what I did. Okay, so let's say I have my video here. Okay, so let's say I want to come over here and just so let's create the macro. So what we want to do is to cut the video file every time there's a transient, let's say like in our kick drum here. So we'll come over, we'll create a new macro because I probably wasn't clever enough to save it. Okay, so we'll just do new macro. So we'll go to our key commands and we'll click on show macros. We'll call it split video at transient. Okay, so I'll just okay, so we'll start with locate next hit point. We'll add that, and then I want to just go the up key, the up arrow rather. So let's add that. And then I think we want to split event. Or maybe just split. Split at cursor, so we'll add that. And now let's navigate down. So I'll just come here, I'll hit my down arrow, we'll select the event, and we'll add that. All right, and I'm just gonna rename this so I could find it easily. Okay, so now every time that we execute this macro, if I did it right, and let me just set up a key command to trigger the macro. Okay, and if I just come here in this event, let's see if I can trigger from the keyboard shortcut, but here, if I just come, I'll just trigger the macro from here. All right, so it's, you navigate here. We'll just try this manually. So go there, and let's say if I don't have it, let me just check my key command for that again. So now, as I just do that, so as we just kind of come right over here, I could just select only these two tracks. So you could just kind of set that macro up. So once again, try that, Jay. So come over here to the key command and just try to transport, locate next hit point, navigate up. That's assuming that the video track is above you. Split at cursor. And let me just see if there's another split as well. Yeah, so yeah, give that a try. I think that will work for you. And you can always look at cubaseindex.com as well. All right, so we see, can you show some tricks using buses and routing? Let's see if that's followed anywhere. Okay. All right, so, you know, if we wanted to take a number of different tracks and kind of route them, so I'll just revert this quickly. All right, so if I wanted to create buses from particular tracks, I could come select all these, right click, and now we could say, let's add a group channel to the selected channels. When we do this, we could create it outside folder, which would place it after the last selected channel, or inside folder. An inside folder is just going to be placing it into a folder of groups that goes to the bottom. So as soon as we do this, we can now come right over there. Now, when we look at this, we'll see that as we select one of these tracks, these are going to be set to the particular group. So we'll call that group 01. But if we also wanted to send tracks to groups, so say if we undo that routing and we add it to, if we wanted to create kind of a parallel situation, we could add just multiple group channels. So let's say I want these all to be going to my stereo output. So I'll just say, let's make all these go to, all of my drum tracks are now being routed to the stereo out. But at this point, I wanted to add 2 group tracks. So I'll just say we're going to add 2 groups. And we can make these mono or stereo, probably stereo. Makes sense. So if I wanted to, instead of routing to the group here, if I have different groups, what I could do now is just go to my effects end. And if we wanted to just put quick link on and set it to absolute, I could select a number of different channels. And as we look at a number of different channels here, so I'll select all those channels. We could activate quick link, and I say, now let's send these all to group 1. Let's turn on if I have absolute mode on. As soon as I change the values of one of them, we could now to all of the different channels once we have that done. So we could send these to group 1 and to group 2. So I'll turn all of these on, and as we work with this, we could now just activate all of the particular channels. So let's say while we're here, we'll just say, okay, you can activate your different group channels, and then we could send it to multiple destinations using send. So you could send it from the output to the group. You could also send it to groups here using aux sends. So there's a couple tips and tricks for that sometimes people miss. Okay, so I think so this is the first question we were discussing earlier on the mixer. So I guess the original question was on the mixer, on a new song, I want to have certain things shown and other things not shown. It will not remember them on a new song. I would like to have defaults. So if you want them, we can think of the mixer as being for the particular project, and each project would be different. But if you want it to have defaults as you work with, if you start with a template and have those settings stored within your template, then you could start off and have those default settings. So once you have everything kind of set up, so a lot of people work with templates, even mixing bands. They say, okay, I'm going to have 16 tracks for drums. I'm always doing a parallel group. I always want to do this. I want to have, multiple vocal tracks so that everything is set up. And then come over here and save as template. And then as soon as you start off your new project, choose a template, and the mixer configurations will automatically be stored directly there for you. All right. So we see from Tom, greetings everyone from London. Thanks for Greg. Thanks for the Cubase 12 feature walkthrough last stream. Very informative. Not sure I'll update just yet, but wanted to ask how long the upgrade price lasts. So, generally, the update and upgrade pricing will be until the next version comes out. So, you'll be able to update and upgrade at a discount until, whatever the next major version is. Let's speculate Cubase 13 or whatever it is. And at that point, we could, it's not like, if you don't update in 3 months, you lose the ability to do that. So that's not how it works. So you're always be able to update at any time to the current version. All right, so we see, I hope to see auto banking feature implemented in the near future. So, so here, like I have a CC121. So a lot of times different control surfaces can automatically bank. And when I select here, my CC121 automatically updates to being whatever the selected banks are. I don't think Mackie Control does that. So there's some control surface protocols that prevent automatically banking. So when we utilize the control surface protocol, so if you run into stuff like that, just make sure that you have auto banking. Sometimes, the program does it, but many control surfaces with the protocol they use do not do it. So, and it's not really in Steinberg's domain. So, all right. So a question from Mark Rabin, just saying, "Hey Greg, how are you? What are you working on musically? What are you excited by in the newest version?" So I have some bass tracks to play for Hot Mess project. So I got 2 songs now. So I'm looking forward to doing that. I've kind of spent the last 2 or 3 months really kind of in Cubase 12 deep dive mode. So I feel like, after doing the live stream on Friday, kind of felt like the last day of school. So I had a nice relaxing weekend and took a day off yesterday to catch up on personal time just that I missed over the last 6 weekends working on videos and stuff. So musically, I'm just working on the Hot Mess stuff. And what am I excited about in the newest version? I didn't think I would really get into the FX modulator, but I really like that. And I love the ability of, dragging an audio file to a chord track, just to kind of show this feature if people haven't seen this yet. And we could do this, so well. So let's say even if I wanted to come here, and this is like a Hot Mess project, and I usually ask, people for chords, and, like I used to always kind of ask for a chord track when I would get sessions to play bass on. So now I could just kind of take, particular audio files and drag it down and, have the chord track automatically generate it. So I think that's probably, my favorite feature, just something that is kind of auto magical. So. All right. So we see, how can we apply offline process to a file in the pool and be applied to all instances in the project? Okay. So I'll jump back over to this project. Okay, so let's say we'll have this future chill. So I'm going to delete it here on the project window. Let's go to our pool window. All right, so let's say I have this particular file. So if I wanted to do offline processing, so let's say I'll take this, and I think if we actually just like from the pool here, I could now just come over and we could see, now that the file is in the pool. So let's say I wanted to apply a flanger on the particular track. So I will come over here to modulation effects and let's go to flanger. Okay, so let's see if we can, the file. Okay, so now so we've applied the flanger and now let's drag it into the project. So now as we listen to it, see if that's the right file. I'll just do a new, just to keep file management here simpler. Okay, so I'll just... All right, so we have this file, and I'm just going to check the path in our pool window, make sure that it's in the particular folder that we're thinking it is in. Okay, so I'm going to come over here, and we'll pair archive. Okay, so we have it in this folder for tester March 8th. So let's say I erase that, or let's say I'm, sorry, let me just, now let's say I have this file used multiple times in the project. Okay, so let's say we want to execute this from the pool. So I will come over from my pool window, select the event, and let's see if we can put a delay on it. Okay, I don't have auto apply on, but let me just. So I'll come here. Let's now go to our pool window. So now, anytime that's being used now. So you could now just, again, come, whether it's in the project or not, you can go to the pool window, select the event, and right click, and you could just apply plugins directly there. So let me know if that's what you want to do. All right, and we have Tiago checking in from Brazil. Okay, so we have a question from Matt Elder. Hi, Greg. I just had a question about Very Audio when generating harmonies. When I generate vocal harmonies, I want to move a note and it snaps back to the original position. Please help. All right. So let me just pop over here really quickly. Okay, so I'm going to just quickly generate a chord track. And as we do this, I'm going to select a phrase. And let's, from the audio menu, generate harmony voices. Okay, we'll just do 2 harmonies. Okay, so now when I come to, when we come here to the audio, and I wanted to do Very Audio on it now, and I want it to move 2 different pitches, we could just, you know, so as we do this, it'll just automatically kind of snap it back to where it was. So when we are on this particular track and we go to chords, we could just choose for it not to follow the chord track. And then as we do this, I can move. So what you want to do is select the track itself, and under the chords inspector, on follow chords, just set that to off, and then you could freely move any of the generated harmonies as you saw fit. So otherwise it's going to be locked into chords and pitches. But if you turn that to off, then you can move the harmonies to any pitch that you want to experiment. Okay, so we see a question. Can I import OMF files and work on final mix projects for video in Cubase 12 Pro? I'm a Pro Tools user looking to switch. So certainly you could do OMF, or if you wanted to import, so you have AAF and OMF as options. So either one of those will probably work great for you. AAF is probably a more contemporary translation format or translation protocol. All right, so I think we covered this before, but just in case it was missed. Hi, Greg. Any news about auto banking for MIDI controllers such as Behringer's X-Touch 1? So I believe that just follows the Mackie control protocol, and that's why in the Mackie, I don't believe the Mackie control protocol automatically or does auto banking. So when you select tracks, it's not going to automatically do it, probably because the Mackie control was thinking that you would do all the banking from the control surface. So I think it's really a limitation of the control protocol. So not much that Cubase could do with that if we wanted to use it. All right, so we have a question. How to view multiple tracks in Audio Warp Editor, but not in the same line? I want to see all of them clearly, not overlapping each other. Okay, so we'll jump back to... All right, so say we have our multiple drum takes here. So I will select these different drum tracks, and let's say I'll hit Control or Command E. And as we do this, we could, when we go into the sample editor, and I'll just do it, we could see that as we look at this, that we could see our multiple events here. So we could choose which one is kind of the active part directly here. But if you don't want to see these overlapping in the sample editor, and we could choose to edit just the active clip. So at this point, it would be just a snare or just a kick or just the overheads, or we could edit these all together. So this way we could warp and say, oh, I want this snare hit to be at the same time as the cymbal crash, or, something else like that. We could kind of pick and choose. So we could edit these collectively together, or if you wanted to edit an individual clip. But if you don't want them to overlap, really all you have to do is just to select the particular events and activate the free warp on the project window. So as we drop in like warp markers here, so I'll just select these different events like so. So this way they're not overlapping. And I could just say, oh, we need to move this hit a little to the left or to the right. And now that all of the events are selected on the project window, we can now just come right over here and warp on multiple parts simultaneously without having them overlap. So that's kind of the beauty of doing it on the project window as well. So let me know if that works for you, Tiago. Okay, so we see from Michael Teams, howdy Greg, thanks for these great hangouts. They are awesome. 1 gallon of tuxedo cream ice cream for my family and myself. Thank you. That's very generous. So I see, hey Greg, I get a loading program failed error whenever I try to load anything but the default patch in Hallian Symphonic Orchestra, newly updated Cubase Pro 12. So I'll give it a shot here. So just do new project, see if I get the same thing. And I'll assume that this is the Hallian Symphonic Orchestra sound set, like that's in how that we could access inside of Hallian Sonic SE. So I'll just come over here. Let's say if I go to my HSO. So I'm not getting any error messages with that, but if you want to send me you know, one of the things that you could make sure that you have, Chris, is that the Hallian Sonic SE version has been updated for Cubase 12, and make sure that you are running the latest version that you updated that. So a lot of people, if you're running previous versions, may not have, you know, reinstalled the latest version of Hallian Sonic SE. So if you're running it in Hallian Sonic SE, make sure that you do that as well. Okay, so we see, hi Greg, how do I get my new version 12 to work with my old USB dongle having problems loading? Thanks for the live stream. So the USB dongle isn't going to have any, you know, doesn't work with version 12. So it's, you know, you have to, once you have it open, just go to your, make sure that, you know, you go to your Steinberg activation manager. So if we just wanted to look at this, you know, we'll come to your applications, and then once we're in the Steinberg activation manager, that once you kind of open up here, that you'll have, you know, so make sure that you see the activation here. So you may have to just kind of sign in to see. But you know, so the new version 12 doesn't have any, won't work with eLicenser at all. So it's kind of, you know, a brand new system. So, you know, eLicenser is not going to work with version 12. All right, so we see Kuba just saying, thanks for getting rid of eLicenser dongle. Now I can just order Cubase online, download, install, and run. So yes. All right, we see John Costigan checking in from Kenosha, Wisconsin. So just see, what if any improvements to Yamaha Studio Manager actually working inside of Cubase? Any updates? So I think it's, I don't think that there's any particular changes with that. So I think it's going to be kind of working the same way that it has in previous versions. All right, and we see Cedric checking in from India. Thanks for joining us in the live stream. All right, so I just see a question. In Inspector, in Program Selector, when there appears MIDI channel 0, program 0, so with library and contact, I get to sound only once. For the second time, I have to reload library. What's wrong? So let's say if I'm here, so, you know, a lot of VST instruments, if you're, you know, so a lot of times samplers aren't notorious for necessarily following like MIDI program changes, because, you know, over the years, you know, like you can send a MIDI program change and it would load up a sample, like, you know, sometimes minutes in the background. So a lot of stuff, but and I don't have a contact license on my computer here, but let's say if I just want it to come over here. So let's say, when we go to, so I'm not sure if you're running it as an instrument track or a MIDI track. I assume it's going to be maybe a MIDI track that's being routed to Hallian or to Contact. So let's say if I wanted to come here to my let's say my VSTi rack, and if we add a rack here and we go to Hallian 6, that now we can see, so once I'm in Hallian 6 here, that we could see, so a lot of times with virtual instruments, we're not necessarily dealing with so many like program changes, but I just see, so with the library and Contact, I get to sound only once. For the second time, I have to reload library. What's wrong? So I don't have a sense of, when you get to sound only once, what you mean by that. So maybe if you have a possibility of rephrasing the question, or if maybe someone else that's more familiar with Contact, it can help me, that'd be great. Sorry for being dense. Okay, so we see, what is the best way to analyze tempo and audio for orchestral music without a clear beat? So I'll just, so sometimes, you'll have like the tempo detection, I've seen it do like some really, pretty amazing tempo detection on orchestral music. So let me see, I think I may have a little short Mahler piece. We'll see if I get that to... Let me just see if I have... I think on my studio computer I have a bunch of classical stuff, but... It's just a very kind of short example. So let's say there's no percussion or anything in there. So let's just see if we come... So even with something that didn't have any real percussion, or something that was very legato, that you wouldn't think would work, you can see how the tempo detection worked. But, once you've done this, it does place you into the warp mode so that you can make adjustments if necessary. But as you can see, it did a great job just kind of taking kind of a random orchestral thing and coming up with the tempo of it. right, just trying to find my spot here. My chat field jumped on me, sorry. Okay, so we have a question. Try to export different audio mixdown using Mixer Snapshot and create a rendering script. All of my mixdowns were the same, but I intended them to be different, each mixdown to a snapshot. All right, so if there is automation that might override, you know, what you're trying to accomplish with that, but I'll try just something. So I'm not sure when you're saying like how you created a script to switch between them. Okay, so, you know, when you create a rendering script, it doesn't, you know, so if you're talking like when we do the rendering script, if you wanted it to, you know, when we go to export audio mixdown, that, you know, we are having kind of different areas here, but it's not going to automatically switch between different mixer snapshots. So if you could let me know Tiago, when you say rendering script, what that entails, if that's something that you kind of did outside of Cubase, but there's no way to have Cubase automatically trigger a particular snapshot. You know, I mean, you could do it through, you know, if you're doing a recall of automation, but, you know, since the snapshot is a static snapshot and not, you know, and doesn't include automation, let me know how you're doing the rendering script, because there's nothing in Cubase to switch between different views. So what a lot of people would do is duplicate the tracks and, you know, put those into a folder and have different views and have different mixes that way. So, you know, you could have them going to different folders. And then you could export multiple, or not folders, but rather groups. And then you could export multiple groups at once. All right, so we just see, I don't like when folder, the question, I don't like when folder doesn't have a meter visual. What is the most compact solution to show a meter? Okay, so let's say we're playing this. Right, so say all right, so we just see, I don't like when folder doesn't have a meter visual. What is the smallest compact solution to show a meter? You know, so if you want it to, you know, come here, let's say if I wanted to assign all these to, you know, a particular group, you know, because we could think of the folder as not necessarily being, you know, the folder is not passing audio. It's more for organizational purposes here. So that's why you don't see a meter, because there's no audio passing through the folder. But if we have all these assigned to like a VCA, I could come here and let's add a VCA track to these, or, you know, we can see our group tracks as well. So now if I wanted to close this, I could just have, we'll assign this to, let me add the VCA from the selected tracks. All right, so now if I just wanted to have everything if I want to see the meters overall, I'll take the VCA out of the folder. So now I could have my drum VCA just be so you could have that be small, still see the meters, but once again, the folder isn't passing audio, so that's why you don't see, meters in there, because it's not processing any audio. Audio is not passing through the folder. So you could assign it to a group or a VCA if you wanted to, or just, shrink all the tracks down. All right, so we see, hi Greg, question. When I work on a movie project with timecode on a ruler, when I open up a song project, the ruler is still on timecode instead of bars and beats, and vice versa. Is the ruler global? So yeah, it is global. So whatever kind of, the settings are, but if you wanted to easily kind of switch between, your primary and secondary time displays. So let's say if we go here, we could see that I wanted to switch between bars and beats, and let's say my secondary time code is set to SMPTE time code. If you just hit the period key, a lot of people don't know this keyboard shortcut, that will allow you to kind of toggle back and forth between the two different meters. So, if you wanted to just say, okay, I only see time code for my film project, now I'm doing music, you could just have that one particular keyboard shortcut, and it's just the period key on the QWERTY keyboard. So you could just kind of toggle back and forth, but that is a global setting. So. Okay, so we see, hi Greg, just updated to Cubase Pro 12, some third-party VST plugins not showing in list to choose to create track, but all the plugin paths in the plugin manager are correct. Any ideas where to correct this? So, generally with VST3 plugins, let me just, okay, so some third-party VST plugins are not showing. Choose to create tracks, and make sure that when you come over here that you go to the studio menu and check your VST plugin manager, and then look under like the block list, and then at this point you could actually just determine if there are particular plugins, and sometimes you could just select a plugin and then choose to remove it from the block list if you wanted to. So like here, you could choose to reactivate particular plugins. So look in your block list, and often plugins will get placed into the block list when, they kind of fail a stability test. So. Okay, just reading through comments. All right, so we see, having Dorco Pro 4, is it better to print quickly score in Dorco, or should I stay with the score editor when I do not need a fancy score, just quick print of the part? So arguably in previous versions, like in 10.5 and earlier, some people, really liked the Dorco Bravura font. So that wasn't in Cubase until version 11. So I'd say if you're doing something quick, Cubase would do a fine job. It's a different kind of workflow than Dorco, but if you wanted to have a lot of flexibility, okay, I'm printing out for 40 or 40 musicians in a small orchestra, and someone needs to be able to just change one particular thing really quickly, and I need this part to be done, that, something like that door code's a better solution for. Okay, so you just see, is there any way to see all of my instrument frequency spectrum in one spectrum to unmasking process? So I'm not sure what to unmasking process is, but, if we wanted to come over here, let's say, as we're playing a particular project, I could come over here and let's say I go to my control room, one of the plugins that you have that you could instantiate in a number of different areas is just coming over here. So let's say, see if I have a preset. So like a lot of times I could come here and you'll have, like the spectrum bars. There's a number of different spectral domain processes. So if you want to see all your, spectrum and be able to determine that, even within the particular file, you could see the particular frequencies here. And as you hover over, at this point, you could see what the pitch is of doing that. So, you'll have kind of different frequency spectrum in the built-in EQ, or check out the Supervision plugin as well. Okay, I just see a comment. I have a challenge in Cubase. All right, so maybe we'll see what the challenge is, if it's coming. Okay, and I also just see, is there any way to see all my, so just kind of rereading this again. So is there any way to see all my instrument frequency spectrum in one spectrum to unmasking? So, one thing that a lot of people also miss is, let's say if I'm here and I'm looking at my, let's say my kick track, that we have kind of a frequency comparison EQ. So if I wanted to look at my snare, I could see the different channels here. So, and we can see the colors of my snare is in orange and my kick is here. So if you want to do kind of frequency comparisons between two different, and if you wanted to EQ, let's say, okay, I want to go to my snare and mess up my snare, that we could see these particular changes. So, but if you could maybe, if I'm misunderstanding, just let me know what is in one spectrum to unmasking means. All right, just seeing, just a comment, see if maybe I missed. All right, so the comment I'm just kind of reading is, this feature will be a game changer for hands-on production and mixing without buying expensive and bulky console/fader editions. But I don't, and it's from Make Pop Music, but I don't know what the context for that, what that feature is. So if you want, I'd be happy to kind of comment on it if I knew what the feature was. All right, so we see, what is the difference between grouping tracks, VCA tracks, and effects tracks, when and how I use them. All right, so a lot of times I'll just revert this project. Or I'll show it another project here real quick. Let me just open that up where I have some automation going on. Okay, so let me just. All right, so let's say we look at my drums, and I have different automation going on my drums. So a lot of times what happens is if I wanted to select all of my drums here, so I'm just going to select all my drums and percussion. And what I want to do now is I'm going to assign these into a VCA. So a lot of times when we use a VCA fader, we have existing automation. I could bring all of my track volumes down. And the problem gets to be a lot of times if we listen to just our drums, so if we listen to my drums here and we see existing automation that's going on, what happens is, if I wanted to just maintain that relationship of the automation, I could make all the drums louder or softer and still have the channel automation automatically going. Now, VCAs don't sum the audio, but VCAs also, if I have a lot of effects on my snare, so let's say if I go to my snare track here, and I just put too much reverb on it, so let's say, so let's say now I'm gonna just jump over to my reverence and I'll just make it a really large. So let's say I have my reverb. Now, a lot of times if I would send these to a group, my relationship between the different effects, if it was all grouped together, when I drop the volume on the group would automatically affect the gain structure to the particular send. So, but when I use a VCA, since the VCA isn't summing, I could adjust the volume and still maintain that relationship and not affect the volume going to the effect sends. So that's why we want to use a VCA. So we could do this, and if we have automation, I could actually automate the VCA track here. So let's say I've automated my VCA, but the other tracks have existing automation on them. So when we go to look at them, at this point I could see kind of like, oh, okay, we have the existing automation and then we see the result of the VCA fader. So I could, if I've done like an amazing mix balance-wise between all tracks and they're going in contrary motion, I could automate the VCA fader here. And then when we go to the VCA fader, we could just say, let's go to link 2 and we'll say combine the automation. And that will automatically change the automation to be the result of the VCA fader. So if you wanted to do like, you know, summing where you want to take like all your background vocals and route it to a group and move that up and down and apply compression on that as a group, like multiple background vocals, apply compression and effects. At that point, that's where a group channel makes sense to kind of, collect different things and process them independently. That's when we could use like a group or an effects channel. But if we have existing automation and we don't want to affect the relationship in automation between different tracks or the gain staging of like your effect sends, that's when we would use a VCA fader. Okay, so we see Razel, just a high grade question. In Media Bay, right hand side, when selected sample plays and continues playing, is it changed? In Cubase 11 was different, so let's go give it a shot. So let's say if I come over here to my media and we wanted to audition different drum loops. So I'm going to have this automatically. So now as soon as I want to come over here, we could just say, okay, let's just go and so as soon as I just wanted to, so since the project isn't playing, let's say now if I had this playing, I can now, and we could align the beats. So it could be that, check to make sure that your settings here between the different play modes and align to beats and autoplay and, wait for project to play. Like those settings are the same, but it seems to be consistent in previous versions than what I have. All right, so we see what plugins are used for mixing and mastering. So often with mixing, you'll have, different EQs, and this will kind of change the different frequencies that are going on in a particular project. So we could say, okay, when I want to come here, I could add more low end. We'll often have dynamics processing. We could have different effect sends for reverbs, delays, coursing, flanging. And on mastering, we often will have different processes for like boosting level. So if we wanted to look at, like even, a lot of people use tape saturation, or if you wanted to use limiters, you could go into the dynamics. And as we do this, we'll just say, I want to use like the new Razor plugin, and those can kind of boost the levels of the entire project as kind of a collective whole. So but every project will require different types of, plugins. All right, great to see Graham Witcher on the live stream. He's excited about the new MIDI remote control functions. All right, so we see, hi, selecting different tracks sends some kind of CC message that mutes my Kronos combi track. Is there some way to avoid this? Okay, so it could be, so generally selecting tracks isn't going to automatically do that, but let's check to see if there's any preferences. it might be that, try to see if you, maybe if you deactivate enable record on selected Midi track, maybe when something is armed for recording, it's the Kronos isn't following that, is reacting to that particular message, but generally it's not anything that, once you select a track, so the mutes my Kronos combi track, there's some way to avoid that. So, check to see, if it's a particular patch that's doing it or if it's doing it in single voices. But it really does kind of sound like, some issue, if you select the track, unless you have, it will automatically, enable record. So maybe that's doing something weird, but I don't think that would do anything to your combi patch. But if you have that with every single project, or if it's just one particular project maybe that has program changes or MIDI CC data, so maybe when you're selecting it, I don't see if there's when you come over here to MIDI, you could check to see, you could also go to preferences MIDI and see if you choose never reset chased controllers. So maybe it's a chased controller as well that could be causing it. But let me know if it's in every single project or just one particular project, or with every single patch or only one particular patch that's doing that. Okay, so we see when and how to use volume automation. So when you want to use volume automation is when you need, like, let's say if I wanted to play this particular track, and I'll just kill my snare verb here. I'll just revert quickly. When you have volume changes that you want to play back every single time, that's when, and let's say, it used to be like multiple people would get their hands on the console. But let's say you need to be here and you really wanted to access one, make one note a little bit louder. So let's say we're listening to this, and let's say right at the end of this phrase, that we could now, instead of having to do that move every single time, we could click on W to record whatever fader moves that we have. And then as we click on R, that will play back. So as my mouse is over here and I remove my hand from the mouse, the bass will just do that every single time without me having to go through and take care of that. And if you're doing that for hundreds of tracks in your mix, that's when you rely on automation, so that it'll do all those volume changes that you record and will just continue to play those back perfectly every single time. Okay, so just see a question. If I'm working on a track and I adjust the tempo using Control T, the coming wave won't adjust with the tempo. I think this is the only challenge that's so serious I got with Cubase. All right, this is an easy fix. So let's say you have to make sure that your audio tracks are playing back in musical mode, that they're working in musical mode. So once we do that, so if I come here to this particular project, all right, so let's say we're playing along and everything is good here. So what I want to do is, so let's say I hit, Control T to go into my tempo editor. And as we do this, let's say, and we put in tempo changes. All right, so they're not going to follow tempo changes until you have to just place all of the tracks into musical mode. So so what I want to do now, just start this off from scratch. Okay, so I have all of my tracks. I'm going to select these, and you want to make sure that when you go into the pool window, you'll see that every track will have a tempo stamp, and you could place it into musical mode here. So if I have all of these tracks selected and they're not set to musical mode, so I'm just going to select them all in my pool, and we'll turn this off. So now when I play, and I hit Control T, and I want to activate my tempo, that these won't necessarily follow. So if all of my tracks are in the pool window here, and we have these all set to be in musical mode, now as we play, and then we'll just have it ramp down. So you just have to make sure all the tracks are in musical mode, and we could do that also by selecting all the audio tracks and placing it into musical mode right there. And then it will follow whatever tempo changes you have. But, that's all you have to do. All right, so we have Andres checking in from Switzerland. Thanks for joining us. So we see a question. Hi, Greg. Any scoring changes with version 12? So the score editor, it didn't receive any updates that I know of off the top of my head. I'm trying to think. So I no real changes. It wasn't a big theme for version 12. There's a lot of stuff in version 10, 10.5, and 11 as well, but nothing in 12 really. Okay, so we see, hey, Greg, when events are saved as versions, is that the equivalent of the event being disabled, i.e. not being processed by the CPU? All right, so when we do track versions, so let's say if I come here, and I now have, let's say with this particular version, I'll just have this color, and let's say I jump back to this version, I'll just do kind of same color here. So, what it's the track version, we could think of it as just being for the particular media itself, like what information is playing back on that particular track. This track may be going through EQs and plugins and effect, but the track version just is different parts that are playing on that particular. So instead of playing this particular part, I could have a track version that is, maybe a different part of it, but it's still going through. And even though they're in track versions, they may not necessarily, while they're in track versions, so these are different parts that are playing on this track. The processing on the track remains the same. So, if you have 100 track versions going on, it's only taking the CPU power that's being utilized in the particular track here, And, so having multiple versions doesn't disable them, but, if it's not playing, there's still audio that's playing. It's going to take the same amount of CPU because it's really about the parts that are on the track that are playing through this particular track, not the different mixer settings or channel settings. So it doesn't really have an impact on CPU to make it more efficient or less efficient. All right, so great to see Gerald Ely checking in from California. Thanks for not making me mispronounce your clever avatar name that you had before. So we see, can you preview us the multi-freeze? So I don't have that version yet to show multi-freeze. So that's one of two new things that will be coming in the next maintenance release is kind of multi-freeze as well as Dolby Atmos. But I don't have that version. I tend not to run any versions on live streams that aren't available. But when it's available, I'll be happy to show it. All right, we have Juha checking in from Finland, and Summit Turan checking in from Sydney. Thanks for joining us. Realize it's very early there. We see from Luca, wish I had 1/100th of Greg's knowledge. Every session I'm baffled. So thanks for the kind words. I'm also really good at figuring out how to get cheap flights and vacations, I learned today. So for my years of travel. So that's what's impressed my wife today. So all right, so we see Michael Pierce is offering up soup to Michael Teen since it's cold in Texas. He's presenting an onion and cider soup with white onions, garlic, potatoes, plenty of thyme, creme, I don't speak French, frachet, and goat's cheese sourdough croutons. Michael Pierce takes his soup seriously. It sounds great. All right, so I just see I uninstalled Rosetta 2, and I'm going to see what I could do with Cubase, missing VST3 support for SD3, unfortunately. So yeah, you can always make sure that you write the companies that you wanted to do VST3 support if they don't have it. But yeah, it's only been 14 years since it's been released, so. All right. So we have Chris saying hi from Jersey in the UK. Thanks for joining us. All right. We see Jeff just saying, thanks for answering my question about opening the supervision using a key command. Thumbs up. That's great. Yeah, sometimes taking a different approach is good. All right, so I see any way of picking up a selected track on MCU. If you select a track in the mixer and then select the control surface, the mixer will jump to the beginning of the mixer channels. So I think that's just how the Mackie control protocol works. So it's not what a lot of people want, but that's how the Mackie control protocol works. So I think this might be just a further clarification from about the NI Studio 2. So it's the NI Machine Studio 2. So as long as it's transmitting MIDI information, you could definitely use it as a controller in Cubase. So no problems. All right, so we see a quick word from Luca just saying A quick word for anyone using Cubase with Windows 11. Somehow the power management feels different, and running it in balanced mode is glitchier than on Win 10. Be sure to switch to high performance. And also, you could probably, on a Windows version, if you go to the Studio menu to Studio Setup, you could probably come over here and once you get to the audio system, you'll see like a use Steinberg, use Steinberg audio power scheme, and then you could do that. Now it's probably the best settings to use for Cubase. Okay, so you have a question. Hey, sorry for joining in late. Not sure if it's been asked. If you had configured a MIDI controller in C11, do these settings get carried over to C12, or do you need to reconfigure the controller? So the existing functions, so generally Steinberg is pretty good with stuff like that. So if you have generic remote and quick controls and Mackie controls set up, those all still work the same way. So you don't have to do any reconfiguring, but if you wanted to utilize the new control system, you could do that. But you can start off right away working the same exact way that you did previously without any issues. And I just see another comment just says, you could still export and import those settings. So yeah, you may see just kind of like a message, and this has been kind of confusing for people. But Steinberg likes to give everyone a heads up, that like, okay, the generic remote in a future version will be going away. So, start using the new system. So this is kind of indicating that it's a legacy information, but you can import and export the different generic remote mapping configurations as well. All right, wonderful to see Dan Freeman from Atlanta. All right, so we see Jorge just saying, I'm here to say that Cubase with the new Mac Studio will be absurdly powerful. So see a question, would we be able to use Keyboard Maestro? I'm a new Cubase user. So yeah, lots of people use that for kind of splitting and doing kind of orchestration. So no problem using that. I configured it for Composer and worked with him on it for getting it set up for him for a couple months ago. All right, so we just see, hi, is there any way to copy and paste an automation point? Okay, so let's say I have two automation points here. So let's say, okay, so if I have, let me just draw some in here quickly. Hang on. Okay. All right, so let's say I want this, the value of this point. So I'm just going to come here and hit Command or Control C. And then let's say I want this point to be the same. Let's say I'll just select this particular automation node, come right here and paste and enter. And then you can see that you could copy one automation point to another value. So again, if I just wanted to come here and say, okay, now I want this node, I could just go to my value line here, paste, and hit enter, and then you could have those 3 nodes at the same point. Let me know if that will work for you. See, Graham Witcher is saying that Michael Pierce's soup is becoming as revolutionary as Mr. Teens's ice cream. So. So I just see, hi Greg, hope you're doing great. What native plugin in Cubase would be similar to Soothe 2, a plugin to reduce harsh frequencies and tame resonances? So, to me, I'm not familiar with Soothe 2, but I mean, usually people would use an EQ for that. And, probably one of the better EQs that you could actually use in any situation would probably be like the frequency EQ. And, what's kind of good for this is, you could just type in particular frequency ranges. And as you kind of dial in, your different frequencies and cues, but if we're on, let's say, a stereo track, let me just put this on my master bus. But once we're here, you could also EQ kind of the mid separately from the sides, and we're thinking not mid as in mid-range, but the middle part of the panning spectrum. So let's say this is the left, middle, and right. We could have different EQs for the mid versus the sides. So if we wanted to be very surgical about that, and they could have different cues as we work with this, and they could also be mid-side, as well as once we start working with we could say, okay, I want to be stereo or left right, but I don't think there's anything that's set up to just reduce harsh frequencies, because different projects may have different harsh frequencies. So all right, so we have Luis checking in from Chicago. Do I need to apply dither when rendering from a 24-bit audio to MP3? Can you explain how to use the new dither plugin in Cubase 12? So it's always advisable, especially if you're changing sample rates and bit depths, which obviously you're going to be doing. So at this point we have the Apogee UV22 dithering. It's been replaced by the Lin 1 dither, and we'll see this under mastering, the Lin dither. So, and it's really, you just want, often you could just kind of say your output depth that you may want it to, you're probably working in 24-bit, probably, set it to, 16-bit at this point, and just kind of turn that on, and you could just leave kind of the active noise shaping. And then, do it as on your master bus kind of post fader, like one of the last insert slots. And then that'll be all you need to do to utilize the new dithering plugin. Okay, just reading through more comments. Thanks for all the great questions. And if you learned something new, make sure you do hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done that. All right, so I see my Cubase 12 will not work without a dongle. What am I missing? I assume it's dongle. So, so when we're, so all the features that come in Cubase 12 will now work without the dongle. So it's using a new licensing system. But if you have a lot of instruments and content sets and loops that have been purchased separately, those haven't been migrated over to those are still utilizing the USB E licenser. Most of them use an E licenser that could work on a soft E license that would have been tied to the system and not to the dongle. But Cubase, Dorico, and Dorico SE are the only programs now that utilize the new licensing system. Over time, those more programs will be changing to the new licensing system. But everything that comes with Cubase 12 is set to work without the USB E licenser. And I've seen discussion on Facebook groups that, people should say, people are saying we should just wait till everything is ready. But, do you want to wait 2 years because one content set from 2015 isn't updated yet? So. All right, so we see can Project Logical Editor target /move faders or event gain? So you can use it. So let's say if I wanted to take this particular, let's say if I wanted to, add gain on my bass. So when you come over here to the Project Logical Editor, let's get to our setup. We could do stuff like, okay, take selected track. We could, let me just say, okay, I want to insert, we'll say our container type is a track. Our property is set to event is selected. And I want it to come here, and we'll say and at this point I could trigger a macro, or let's see if it's I think there is a so we can say increment So now I could say any track that I want to, that is selected, increment the volume for dB. So we could do stuff like that. Now you could also come over here. We could say property. We could say is set to and we'll say parent object is selected. So if we have automation, we can now come over here. We'll see our automation. And while it doesn't move the fader physically, we could just say, I want to say, okay, we're going to say container type is equal to track. And we'll say that the property is set to track is property set to event is selected. And now we'll say our property is going to be set to parent object is selected. So now if I just have this particular track and we're going to say choose transform, and we'll say we're going to trim, and then we could just say increment volume dB by 6. So where I see all of my automation here, I can now, or say 2 dB. So now I could just take all of the automation on selected tracks and increment the automation values, just kind of like that. So those are some different things. So it doesn't necessarily move the fader, but you can increase the gain of the clip, and you can change the volume automation as well with the Project Logical Editor. All right, so we see question, Greg, is there a way to write or edit automation on 2 audio channels / instruments at the same time? Thanks. So, you know, if you're using a control surface with multiple faders, you could do that, but you could also just, if you wanted to link, let's say if I wanted to link my overhead channels here, so I'm just going to link these together. So I'll just, and I will just call this OH for overhead, and I'm going to link my volume. So now as I do automation going on the track, and I select this, that I can write the automation because it'll be just linked. So as I just want to automate my tracks, I could just move one fader on my CC121, and we could just automate multiple tracks that way. So if they're linked, or if you have, you know, a control surface that has 8 faders on it, you can use multiple faders quite easily as well. All right, so see Christian says, hi from Germany, just upgraded from Pro 11. Maybe I can learn something new here. So thanks for joining us. All right, so it just says, hopefully a future update will have MIDI remote editor propagate or paginate different MIDI channels using MIDI channels in the DAW, so you would, as you would hardware for designated presets, spines. You know, so one of the things that you could do, like if you wanted to, let's say I wanted to set up my remote control here, and I'll just let's get to my scripting here and go to my mapping editor. So I'm just going to come and I'll select, let's say I want my drum pads here. So I want this, and we'll just say up. I think we could find this under navigate, up. All right, so I've added that function, and let's say when I come to, all right, so I'm just going to apply that mapping. Okay, so like even if I wanted to go through different like track presets, you know, once I'm here, I could just say, okay, we have an insert, and I wanted to come to frequency EQ, and I have my presets here. So let's say if I just wanted to navigate, I could just hit my drum pad to go down or up, and you could see kind of here what pad is being hit. So we you know, we could choose these different functions to navigate presets if you wanted to as well, just using the existing generic remote. But let me know if I'm misunderstanding, especially with binding. So we see a comment from Mark Rabin, says, my love for the chord track keeps growing. It's amazingly awesome. So yeah, it's a very smart developer who came up with that whole concept. So. All right, so we have Nicholas checking in from Vienna. Thanks for joining us today and being a part of the community. Okay, so in C12, there is a question. In C12, there's a new export selected tracks feature. Are you able to determine the export format? Example to MP3, WAV, 4441, 16-bit, etc. All right, so let's say if we have numerous events here. And I wanted to export to selected events here. So now it will come to export selected events. And then as we do this, we could choose kind of different bit depth. So here, I don't think it allows you to switch. You know, it's going to be the same. So it doesn't do MP3, but within the export selected events, you could have it do different bit depths. It's going to kind of choose the same sample rate if you want it to. So, you know, so it's not going to do that. So if you want it to, you know, set those different things up, you could come over here and just kind of create a macro and do different stems. And then as we go to your export audio mix down here, you could have different presets and you could choose to export based upon cycle markers. All right, so we have music all day, checking in from Ypsilanti, Michigan. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we see a question. How can I erase the warp lines? Okay, so let's say I'm in my audio editor here, and let's say I have my hit points, and I'm going to translate these hit points into warp markers, and I'll adjust kind of the intensity. Okay, so now, or I'll just go to my audio warp here. So let's say if I have warp markers in that have been added since we go into free warp. Just select. Okay, so let's say if we just get in our project here real quick. Okay, so now I'll come here. Let's just drop in warp markers. So if we have warp markers, if you just hold down the Alt or Option key, you'll see it turn into like a pencil or an eraser rather when you hover near the top, and then you could just click and erase the warp markers just like that. So once you see it turn white, you know that that's the selected one. So just hold down the Alt or Option key and click on the top. It will turn into eraser tool, and then you could erase the warp markers. And if you wanted to erase all of the warp lines, you could, so say if I just have 100 of them in my project and they're annoying me, you could just click right here in the audio warp section and click on reset. And let's see if you can do it from the audio menu as well, maybe. Yeah, so just come right there and then click on reset, and then you could get rid of multiple warp markers at once. All right, Miguel is saying using Elements 12, absolutely love the new license, absolutely love the new version. License is a breeze. Okay, so we have a question. I can't get Midi remote to work on regular Midi tracks when I assign CC numbers from scratch in the QC menu in the inspector. It works perfectly on instrument tracks. Can't find a problem. All right, so. Okay, so I guess you're doing the quick controls in the inspector here. So let's say if I select this particular track and we come over here to our quick controls. So let's say if I wanted to come Okay, so with this, I'm not sure if you're, I usually set up for the quick controls, I usually don't set them up there. For the track quick controls, I often just, like the pre-Cubase 12 way was to set up the quick controls here that you want and to map them, and you could just use the MIDI learn function. Now, when you're using the new MIDI remote, and if, let's say, if we have like knobs that are assigned for quick controls, like I have these knobs here that are assigned for quick controls. The one thing that you could check if you're utilizing the new MIDI remote, which I'm just going to reread just to make sure. Okay, so I got the MIDI remote to work. So, once you have here set up, there is a focus. So you could just simply come right over here and just say, I want it to be on, the track and plug-in window focus or just the particular focus. So make sure if you have it set here for, track and plug-in window focus that, if I'm on a plugin, that now when the plugin is the active, I move my quick control knobs that we see, these parameters adjusting. But if I go to make the track my active window by clicking on the track, now I could see my track quick controls active. So make sure that, you have the focus set correctly here. And that, once you're here, that you have the focus set correctly, and maybe your focus is not set appropriately. All right, so we see from Sven Isaacson, it didn't take me long for the loss of the dongle caused a problem since Steinberg denies me to install Cubase 12. I need to replace the OS. How do I de-authorize the licenses for Cubase 12 and Dorco SE? All you'd have to do is just to deactivate the license in the Steinberg activation manager. So once you you could just click there to deactivate it. That's all you have to do. So. All right, so we see, does SoundToys plugins work with Cubase 12? So I don't think they have VST3 versions yet. I think they're in the works with it. So, and there's a lot of confusion because VST3 plugins are what's needed for Apple M1 native compatibility. So if you want to be Apple M1 native, you need VST3 plugins as opposed to other plugin formats. So that's something to kind of be aware of. So if you're not on a, if you're not on Apple M1, there's no change with VST2. And if you are on an M1 processor, you just have to run it in Rosetta mode if you want to run those plugins. So I think they've already publicly announced that they are working on their VST3 versions, like a lot of plugin developers. So bear with me just a second. I have to plug my laptop in. Give me just a second. All right, I'm back. Sorry about that. All right, so we see from Luke Tone just saying, I've been using Cubase 12 since 8 a.m., so slick and very stable. Haven't used new features, but all my projects transition. So yeah. All right. So I just see, hi Greg, the Cubase window is not clear. So, if it's the YouTube transmission, it's probably, generally if something isn't clear, that's kind of on dealing with the internet speed that's going on on your end. So check that, but it will be available to watch afterwards, but it is I'm, presenting in 1080p, 60 frames a second. So it should be pretty clear. Sometimes if you refresh your browser. All right, so we see David Reuter and Kristen Parisi checking in from Nashville. I hope you guys are doing great. Look forward to seeing you guys in person sometime when I get back to Nashville. Thanks for joining the live stream. Wonderfully talented production team. So we see a question. Is there a limit to how many times you can activate and deactivate on the same computer? In case of a computer malfunction, can you still deactivate on a computer via your account at My Steinberg? So if the computer, like let's say your computer just dies, I believe that that Steinberg can remotely deauthorize your system if it doesn't physically turn on, and can free up that license activation for you. But I don't think it's done by the user. I think that would be done directly through Steinberg to do it in case of a computer that's not turning on. But I don't think there's any limits to deactivating the same computer. But I haven't extensively tested it, but I think conceptually I don't see any problems with that. All right, so we have a question. Is there a difference if store Cubase projects in SSD or in HDD? So generally, when opening up projects, if it's just for archiving, the SSD will be faster, but, it's obviously more expensive than an HDD, but their prices have, come down significantly. So, but if it's just, but if you're playing projects and opening projects from the drives, that's when you can notice a difference, especially if you use a lot of sample libraries. If you're doing like big orchestral libraries, that's when an SSD can really make a difference compared to a normal HDD. So we just see a question from 2R Studios. Thanks as usual. I have a question regarding recording lanes. When you paste together different pieces on different takes, is it possible to edit several tracks at once, i.e. drums? Sure. So let's come over here. Just find a project I was thinking of. And what really helps is when you do this, if you have them in a folder with group editing turned on. Okay, so let's say I'm just going to duplicate this particular track, and I'll change the color on this one. So, and duplicate track. All right, so let's say I want to put these all into a particular folder, and I'm going to enable group editing. So if I want to do kind of like comping for drum parts, and I'll just hide my lower zone so we could see this a little easier. All right, so now, I placed them into a folder and I've placed group editing. So now when I use the comp tool across one of the parts, I just come right over here and notice that it'll be group edited across multiple events simultaneously. So you could do comping in kind of the same way. So if you wanted to edit several tracks together, put them into a folder and apply group editing, and then any change you make will automatically be applied to all the other tracks in the folder as well. All right, sorry, my chat field jumped on me, but I see we had some active moderation going on, so thanks for that. Appreciate it from Jazz Dude or Agent K. All right, so I may have lost a couple of questions. I apologize for that. Sorry, I just had to refresh. So I see, why no new VST instruments in Cubase 12? There is a new VST instrument that comes with Cubase 12 called the Verve Piano. It's very nice. So let's say if I just wanted to jump to this project here. So listen to this. Waiting on our yellow coach to ferry us home. You look my way, yellow coach to ferry us home. You look my way, your heart showing. So we come. So this is a wonderful kind of felt piano instrument. But what's great about it is like how easily and beautifully it layers in to your production. So I say, but basically what we have is, you know, we could adjust the distance of the piano mics, the balance between, it's a 12 velocity layer piano sample, and we have a kind of a layered voice as well. So we could blend that, or if we wanted to add more, like a, you know, basically having a filter on the pad sound. If we wanted to do that and adjust the variation, kind of more, adds a little more liveliness. So we could look at different piano settings or different textures. So we say, okay, let's just add some analog strings to that. And now I say, okay. And we could also add different effects. So we have delays on the piano as well as the texture and reverb.
Do you remember the day that we met? It was a long, long time ago. And I still love you like the day that we met. Oh, a long, long.
And it's kind of the instrument that you put it in a project here. So it's,
I remember the day that we went.
and when you take it out, it just kind of sounds empty.
Our first kiss, there was no regret. Right after that Garth Brooks show, you told your daddy and he called my mom. Said you were too damn good for any boy that dumb. His soured words are now dead and done. Now we're two grown daughters.
So it's a wonderful instrument that comes, you know, so that is coming with Cubase 12. So you do have new instrument. Okay, so we see what is the most effective way to use the VCA faders when mixing. So we covered this a bit earlier, but again, it's when we're going to have existing automation that is going on a particular, like, you know, set of instruments, and we have effects that are being utilized for those instruments, where we want to be able to, you know, maintain the relationship between all of the different instrument parts. And as we want to do that, not affect the gain structure of the effects. So again, we'll just, so we look at our drums here. So I'll just, so when we have all of our different tracks, I'm going to add a VCA track to the selected channels. So when we want to come here, we could just say, okay, we're going to add so we'll say, okay, this is our VCA. So as I adjust this, we can see that we have automation where some tracks are going up while others are going down. And if I wanted to decrease all of those together, that's when we could write that as automation, as we showed earlier. But, you know, when we have a lot of those different tracks and we wanted to be able to edit and coalesce the automation, we can now just kind of write the automation here. So if I want to bring everything down, and while I bring it up, you'll still see tracks going in contrary motion. So I bring it up, you'll still see tracks going downward. So, and when we go to a particular track, now that we automated that, we will see not only the original track here, the original automation, but if I wanted the result of the VCA to be embedded in the automation, I would just go to the VCA itself, and we'll see this little drop down menu where you can combine the automation, and now that's the automation of the effect. So when you're working with a project that has complex automation and you don't want to sum or affect the gain structure going to effect sends, that's when VCA faders are really helpful for mixing. So we see question, hello, what about Dolby Atmos and Cubase 12? So Steinberg has announced that there will be Dolby Atmos support coming in the next maintenance release, probably 4 to 6 weeks. So look for that coming soon. All right, so we see how different is the new MIDI remote function in Cubase 12 from the generic MIDI remote functions in Cubase 11. So the generic remote, is arduous to set up. Many people, just when they looked at this, didn't correlate between the parameters at the top, the nomenclature being used to finding functions, and being able to find functions was very difficult. So you come here and there's a category, so you go to a quantized category, and then you go through scrolling through all this. So to assign parameters, this is where kind of the joy of the new system is. One is you make a physical representation of the controller itself, and you map out the controller so you could actually find particular keys. But when you need to do mapping, at this point, we could just say, okay, I need to come over and go to mapping, to the mapping assistant. So you could just search for different parameters. So let's say, I want this to quantize to quarter notes. You could just type in quarter, and then you could just come over here and just literally type in different values. So I wanted this to do, whatever function, you could just type in. So being able to click the physical button on your controller, and you can see that as I just hit my drum pads here, that these will be what is going to be assigned. So hitting that and then being able to search directly here, and a lot of functions, for transport, you could just say, oh, I want to just right click and pick up for remote mapping. So I can say that button is now assigned to that particular function. So being able to find, these are thousands of functions, and being able to find those functions and assign them to knobs, buttons, sliders on your controller is so much easier. And it kind of combines not only a lot of the aspects of the generic remote, but also the quick controls in a nice consolidated area. Okay, so we just see, hi Greg, can you show me the color scheme settings? So let's say, if you wanted to do like colors, there's going to be the project color setup where we could choose different colors here. And there's also different color schemes for different aspects of the program. So if we wanted to come over here to preferences, like let's say if I have a, like the background, I wanted this background here to be blue, lighter. We could go to the user interface to color schemes. And then I could say, okay, the project area background color. And I could now just say, I want that lighter, and hit OK. And as we do that, we could see different color schemes that will show up for ruler backgrounds, editor area backgrounds. So all these, different functions. So if you wanted, grid lines to be more intense or darker. So if you wanted to do that, you could just come over and change different aspects or go directly back to defaults very quickly. All right, so we see since Bluetooth, BLE MIDI is now added to Cubase 12 for Windows 10, will the CME Pros WDI Master work without additional plugins in Windows and Cubase 12? I believe so. I haven't tried that particular piece of hardware, but I'm pretty sure and I'm pretty inclined to think that it would. So it's just going to be using the WinRT standard. I don't have any Bluetooth MIDI devices personally, but I guess I'll have to buy one. So we see, is there a way to use the normal editor and the extension editor at the same time in the lower zone? Sometimes I want to make edits in normal editor and later open in some ARA2 extensions for the tracks. I think, you can't see them both at the same time, but that you do have kind of the capability to kind of switch back and forth to unload the extension if you wanted to. But I think that's kind of the nature of ARA2. All right, so I just see, hey, Greg, do you mind asking the development team to add MIDI channel management in MIDI remote? My controller allows me to change channels, and I'd like to map controls to the different channels. So once again, each control could have independent channels. So if you wanted to, have a number of, different, if you have like 8 faders that transmit on channel 1, and then you hit a button and those 8 faders transmit on MIDI channel 2, you can just treat them all, you could still have access to 16 faders because it's just whatever information is being captured directly in the actual, when you're assigning when you're going through the surface editor. So as soon as you're here, all you have to do is just transmit, whatever your controller is spitting out. Cubase will see if it's on different MIDI controls. So if I want it to come here and even just, it's captured the MIDI channel and the note number just that easily. So I don't think you'll have a problem with how it works already. See, Gareth is saying, was watching Greg on TV while chomping on my burger. Greatest show on earth. Well, we're glad I could keep you company during dinner. All right. And we're glad you can make it, Gareth. I got the second song, so I'll work on that. Should have some time in next after tomorrow. All right, so we see, hello, Greg. I am an FL Studio user from long time till today. Bought Cubase 12. I remix songs. I don't have any idea how to fix vocal with tempo. Audio warp. So, if you wanted to just, come directly to, if you needed to, have your files automatically follow tempo, really all you have to do is, you could just go to, just find a particular project here. Didn't like that project now, so I just So if you're trying to just get the vocals to fit into a project, once you assign the tempo to the particular audio file, and we could do that in a number of different ways. One is, if you select all your files and we go to your pool menu, so we'll just come directly to my media and we go to the pool window, we could just see all of the audio files are being used in the project and make sure it has a tempo, and then just place it into musical mode. And then kind of whatever tempo that you're playing at will automatically, be mapped directly. Just set my outputs here correctly real quick. So as we're, if I wanted to change the tempo of the project, now if you needed to just, fix like one particular event, you could come over here and you could go to audio warp and then click on free warp. And then you have the option of just kind of, dropping in warp markers and then being able to move the event. And this is, think of it more for correcting different rhythmic errors, but, all you have to do is place the tracks into musical mode once the tempo is set, and then it will automatically fit and fit in your project. So we see this from Summit Terrain, and happy, and we're glad that you could be part of the Cubase family. Congratulations on getting your new software. All right, just reading through comments. Okay, so we see, hi Greg, when I try to upgrade Cubase 12, will there be an automatic instructions on how to download the new license? So yeah, so the basic concept is that, they're going to take your existing e-licenser and it's going to upgrade the license of that to version 11, and it's going to be called non-upgradable. At that same point in time, you can just, and then you're going to go to the Steinberg Activation Manager after that process has been done. So you'll get a DAC code, enter that in. It's going to take your existing e-licenser to a Cubase 11 non-upgradable license. And then in the Steinberg Activation Manager, you'll see the ability to activate your Cubase 12. All right, so we see how to remove duplicate entries in Groove Agent 5 styles. Let's take a look. All right, so let's see if we come over here, if I could find any duplicate styles. So Mark, if you want to email me just as to like if like the name of if you have any duplicate styles, And I'd be happy to kind of take a look, see if I could find those particular ones, but it didn't seem like I have any duplicate ones. But if you want to, if there's a specific one that you're seeing, or if it's for every single one, just let me know. All right, you see Gareth is very happy that Michael Teams is there, so we're all happy to see Gareth as well. Okay, so I see a question. I'm trying to record sound effects from howling into an audio track directly from an on-screen VST instrument panel. Is there a way to do that without an external MIDI keyboard? So if you wanted to do it, you could probably, let's say if I will open up a Hallian instance here. Okay, so let's say okay, so what I could do is I'm just going to take this particular track, this Hallian track here, and let me just okay, so I'm going to take that track, I'm going to right click on it and say add a group channel to the selected channel. All right. All right, so it's our group, and now what I want to do, so now when I play the keyboard here, it's being routed out to the group, and I'm going to add an audio track. And I want this to set its input from the group channel. So now I'm going to open up a virtual keyboard, and you can do this by holding Alt or Option plus K. And I'm going to arm the audio track and the group track. So now, as I would play, I'll just solo this. And then we'll stop, and everything that I did was recorded as MIDI and as audio simultaneously here. So if we wanted to just listen to and just triggering from the computer keyboard, or you could click with the mouse. So that's how you can record a Hallian instrument to audio without using the without using a keyboard. All right. Okay, I'm having loading multiple tracks for Cubase 12 to Wavelab 11 and opening them in Wavelab 11. So I'm not sure if you're trying to open multiple tracks from Cubase into Wavelab 11. If you want to tell me like what your workflow is, Kevin, with that. So a lot of times people will take a particular track, because Wavelab will offer some very specialized editing tasks. So instead of doing multiple tracks, often people, when we do this, will just say, okay, I'll go to my audio menu. And at this point, we could say, edit in Wavelab. So now I could just come right over there, and let's say if I just So, and then we could launch Wavelab in the background. So, but it's not really intended for like most people, if there's a particular workflow why you need to import multiple files into Wavelab, if you could let me know, Kevin, or if you're just doing it for the sake of doing it. Yeah, and if you want to reach out to me maybe Thursday afternoon, Kevin, I could show you some stuff over Zoom if you want. Okay, so I see when I was using rendering on selected events, it renders all overlays on Cubase 12. So could you tell me like what you mean by overlays? So I don't understand what overlays are in that context. All right, so we see from Gareth, was there not talk of updating 11 to be non-dongle as well, or was it a dream I had? So there's been no announcements of doing that. So, 11 and earlier will stay on a USB-E licenser, and we'll have 12 and going forward on a new activation manager. So, just reading through some comments that, people wanted the choice to do that, but it's just technically not feasible to do that, or it's practical in the development cycle to continue to do stuff. And, we see that a lot of the transition issues that people had going to 12 was not with the new licensing system, but, kind of migrating from the existing USB-E licenser. So it's going to be problematic as we have more users trying to update on the same day. So with this new system in place, it's going to be much easier. And, we had, lots and lots of complaints about, when the USB-E licenser was down. So as we move forward, we'll be less reliant on that. It'll be more streamlined. We see from Nick saying, impressing the wife is the most important thing. I bet some people would like to know the shortcut key for that. So, yeah. Just find a good family vacation and save $1,500 by going a day earlier. So, but yeah, try to keep my wife happy. She's pretty awesome. All right, so we see Grant Nicholas from Baltimore in the live stream. Glad you could join us today, Grant. And Gareth wants everyone to smash the like button. All right, so we just see, I asked this before, why is there so much trouble for loading my mixdown files from Cubase to Wavelab? So let's say if I wanted to mix down just a small portion here, I'll just say, let's get to export audio mixdown, and I'll just choose after export to open in Wavelab 11. So I'll just come here. So now when I do my export audio mixdown, we do this. It now opens up Wavelab 11. And there's our file. So it seems pretty easy. So let me know if you're doing it differently, Kevin. So we see, so that button, Greg, do you press to get the cheap air flights in Cubase Pro 12? Yeah. I think I've given American Airlines lots of money over the years, so. But I know how to kind of work the systems for which flights are cheaper, so stuff like that. Yeah, so you see Stephen Butler just saying a holiday for the Undo family. Hooray, so well earned. We'll miss you. Yeah, so it'll be like at probably the very first part of April. So we'll be in on holiday for my son's birthday. So looking forward to that. All right, and we have Lawrence checking in from Rhode Island. Thanks for joining us. All right, and we have Volker checking in from Germany. All right, I keep having a disk cache overload signal and interruption of sound. Is there a way to get rid of that without buying another computer? The first thing I would do is to, go, if, first thing I would do is try to, select your audio interface here and go to the control panel and try to increase the buffer size. So a lot of people have a low buffer size and it makes it more responsive, but it makes your computer work significantly harder. So the first thing I would do is, try to make sure that, if you haven't raised your buffer, is to do that, But most of the time we don't see disk cache, issues because, unless you're doing like hundreds of audio tracks, it's probably not so much so pertinent. Unless you're doing tons, maybe if you're doing like lots of streaming of large sample libraries, but try raising the buffer size would be the first thing I would do before buying a new computer. All right. So we have Apostolos checking in from Greece. All right, so we have a question. Is it possible to show the value of each point near every automation event? So let's say if we have automation going on. Okay, so if you want to see what the value is, as you select a particular event, so let's say if I come here, I could see the values. So as I just wanted to hit the left and right arrow keys, we could go to the next automation node value. Another way of viewing this is if we go to the project browser, so we could select the track here, and we could actually just look at the automation, and we could see, you know, the automation point in time. So as we select our different values here, we could just say, okay, I want to go to, and I could, so as soon as I select an automation node here, I could see what the value is and what time, and we could see it visually. So, and again, that's by going into the project browser, selecting the track, and just selecting automation, volume, and then you could select your different nodes just that easily. So let me know if that works. So can you reveal automation without clicking on the right button? So many plugins will allow you to, so if you just want it to come, so say if I want it to go to, let's say step filter, I could just come right over here and then right click, and then we could just say show bass cutoff automation track. And then at that point, we could just open up the automation track just that easily. So, anything that we want. So you could, in like, the Steinberg plugins, at least the VST3 versions, we could come over here and just show, that particular automation lane just by right clicking on the parameters. All right, so you see Luca just saying, I'm sad about the dongle simply because I frequently move from machine to machine with one of them not having internet. So if you really just, activate, if you have internet on it once for the activation, you should be all set. You don't have to leave the internet access on at all. Okay, so it says, I'm a guitar tutor. Question, I'm a guitar tutor in music school. Can I buy the educational version? When I update to Cubase 13, I have to pay more then. So there are, if you could, I think there are, you could check what the requirements are. I think some of it's like having in some of the educational versions, you'll need to, it'll need to be like a purchase order from the school for the educational discount. So if you could have that with the school. And it says, when I update to Cubase 13, do I have to pay more then? So, generally the updates are paid when you go from like an 11 to 12 or 12 to 13. So. Okay, so just see question. I entered the key editor, chose a key, and checked all the boxes, so I could not play a wrong note when inputting a melody, but it was still allowing me to input wrong notes. What did I miss? Okay, so let's say if I'm here, my Halligan part, okay, and we go to the scale assistant. So make sure, I'm not sure what all you activated, but let's say I'll just extend the length of this part. And now I want this to be in the key of B major. Okay, so I'm going to just come here and snap live input. So I will put this into like a step entry mode. and I'm just going to hit kind of all the white keys on my computer keyboard. So I'll just double click to enter in my node right there. So as I paint in, so now all these notes, as we look at them, will now all be, let me just take out step mode. Yeah, so all those notes I just entered, we're doing that. So make sure that you have, so just that the editor scale is set there, and snap live input. And that should do it on as you play melodies in. So I see, well, Cubase 12 multiple files can migrate to Wavelab 11. Should I have not purchased it because there is a dongle? So I don't think having a dongle should be a factor in purchasing or not. But you could take multiple files over if you wanted to. So you just have to do the edit in Wavelab. But, if you could tell me, what you want to do, Kevin, with the files from Cubase into Wavelab, that would be helpful as well. So we see question for control that already has integration like complete control. Is there any advantage to setting up with MIDI remote? Can we gain extra functionality? So I don't know the extent of the complete control, but I don't think that it's going to be anywhere near what you could do with the new MIDI remote control functions. So like even being able to create an AI knobs, there's probably lots of stuff that it wouldn't be able to actually do. So I think you'll have a lot more control with the new studio, but I don't use the complete control. All right, so we see, is it possible to trigger logical editor presets with MIDI? So if I just wanted to come here, let's say I'm in this particular editor, so I'll just hit, let's go to my mapping assistant here. So we'll just say, okay, so I'm going to hit a particular button on my drum pad, and now I just want it to come here, and we could just say, okay, here's logical editor. So here's all of our process logical editor presets. So now I could just apply the mapping. So if I just wanted to apply that particular preset to any MIDI button or knob or pad, we could just set it up with a generic remote or with the MIDI remote that easily. So. All right, so we see, is there a plan to work with Studio Live Series 3 mixer as a controller? So most of the mixers will just, you could set it up as long as it transmits MIDI. You could set it up in just a couple of minutes to do all of the functions directly here and assign them. Or you could just simply, most of them will also utilize Mackie control as a protocol, but you may get more functionality here. All right, so we see, is there a frequency setting in Vari Audio, i.e. 442 hertz when the music is in a different tuning? So Vari Audio, and I believe that the algorithm is optimized for tuning at 440 hertz. So, but I think between 2 hertz, you may not notice a huge difference. Okay, so it says, now that we are dongle free for Cubase 12, would be nice if we could also lose the iLock for other plugins stream. So I think iLock is also kind of moving to like a machine-based system. So, but we could only do so much, and we can't, manage the licensing for every plugin developer. So. Okay, so I just see Mark Rabin just saying, "Am I missing? IC Pro seems to not recognize computer with 12, so I don't have my iPad powered up with IC Pro on it, but I'll check it. I know I got an email that I saw from you, Mark, so I'll check it out and I could email you back." So I see a question, do you know if we will see a Nuendo 12 update this year with the same features? So that's generally how it's been working. So I think we'll see Nuendo 12 coming. I think it's been announced that, we should see it, coming pretty soon. There's announcements from the Timo Wildenham, who's the, the Nuendo project manager or pro audio manager for Steinberg. All right, so I see a question. I saw a couple well-known mix engineers recommending to use 32-bit instead of 16 or 24. Do you know what the difference is, and if it should be 32-bit float or just 32-bit? So most people don't have 32-bit integer converters or the ability to record 32-bit integer. Cubase and Nuendo do, as well as Wavelab. But it's when we're dealing with 24-bit audio, and we want to add additional information for the mix, that's when you'd want to use 32-bit float, because otherwise you'd have to kind of truncate the audio information to fit in all of the different effects, EQs and compressors, and all of the processing. All right, so we see Brianna from Youngtown, Ohio. Thanks for being here. See, Graham Witcher's just saying the Verve Piano is one of the reasons I'm going to upgrade to 12. Sounds absolutely wonderful. So yeah, it's a wonderful instrument. Okay, so I see question. My Cubase project I had to mix on won't not open in 11 or 12. But I mixed it in 10, and for some reason it's corrupted. Is there any way to get that session open and save it? Sometimes you could send in a corrupted project to Steinberg. I think that they've corrected some stuff, but also see if you have like the session name with a .bak file, like a backup file. It's probably at the same level as where your session is or where the project file is, and at that point, you probably have backups as well. All right, so we see David Griffiths in Wales in the UK joining us. Thanks for joining. All right, we see, does Cubase have a new feature where you can see the key scale in an audio file? Can you please demonstrate how that works? Okay, so if we wanted to, there's two things. One is that we could just have, the guitar, like take audio files and have the guitar and have audio detection on them. So for chords. So I'll just come over here. We'll load up this project here.
In the school parking lot, waiting on our yellow coach to ferry out
So if I want to take this guitar track and just drop it into an empty chord track, so now we have our chord track is automatically populated from that. And as we, so we could do that. But also when we go to our vocal, we could just come right over here, and when we go to our Very audio, we can now do editing based upon the scale. So previous versions, we could we could colorize based on our chord or scale, but now we could actually do editing where we could do snap pitch editing. So while we're doing this, now I can't move it to a note that's out of key. And I could also just come here and I could select all my notes and quantize pitches and just have that kind of automatically quantize directly to the key as well. All right, so I know we had some questions that were mailed in. All right, so just see, I have a problem with Cubase 12 with two monitors. When the video window is extended to the second monitor, half in the first monitor and half in the second one, Cubase always freezes. The problem appears only during loading and not while working with the session. So the solution was to disable one monitor, then open the session, then activate the second monitor, then put the video window on the second monitor and continue working. Is it a bug in Cubase or Windows? I'll check this. I'll hook up. I've kind of migrated to a single larger screen for my setup, but I'll hook up two monitors and see if I could get it to replicate. Often when I hear things like this, it kind of seems like it's really more, sometimes it could be like display driver issues. But I'll be able to check it out, and I'll send you a response by email after I get my monitor set up. All right, another question sent in. Is there a way to use Cubase 12 new MIDI remote mapping with my old original Mackie Control MCU so I can control plugins? Thanks. So many times, I believe that the Mackie devices will transmit MIDI, but if you have the Mackie defined as a Mackie control, that may overtake the particular functions of that. So it's not going to be transmitting MIDI. It's going to be kind of stuck in Mackie control mode. So you may have to, if you have Mackie control activated, to just come up and turn that off. And then do the actual MIDI CCs that you want to control for plugins. And it's just how Mackie control, you have to realize that this protocol was set up in probably 2000. So it wasn't thinking that we were probably going to be using it in 2022. So it may not be like the most elegant where you hit a button and then it's going to be in MIDI control mode. So some devices, I think, do that. I think the Behringers, you could hit a button, it's in Mackie control. If you hit another button, then it's doing like MIDI CCs. So if your Mackie control can do that, if not, it's going to be a limitation of the controller itself. Okay, so I just see question. I tried mapping my desktop controller MPK49 knobs and faders mapped correctly and work. However, I tried to map the MPK49 transport controls using the assistant, but it will only work once and then become unresponsive after several attempts with the same results. I noticed my keyboard commands still worked, so I mapped the transport controls to the same functions on my keyboard command mappings. It works, so I had no idea why. I suspect USB connection might be the culprit. Sometimes people in different controllers, one thing to check, if you had set up the MIDI remote where it's like, okay, I'm here and I want it to, let's say I'm on the Surface editor, make sure that when we look at this, that, if we select a number of different parameters, that, if we're actually just learning, I say, okay, let's select a button here. And now I want to hit the button itself to populate. So that way we've established that there is, MIDI communication going directly to that device. But sometimes these will, as we look at the editor, sometimes these transports may be on a different MIDI port so that the transports can be isolated from the particular area. So you may want to, as we look and select different functions, so let's say if I come here and we wanted to, maybe look at it on the Surface editor, you could see if this is, so make sure that you're, if you set it up your own controller, that it's actually doing that, or I'm not sure if you're using a pre-done script. But sometimes those particular controls may be on a different MIDI port where transport could be set up on an independent MIDI port from the other controls. Okay, so I think we got the other questions answered throughout the live stream. Thanks for all the great questions. And let's go ahead and see how we're doing on time. Okay, we got about 5 minutes left. Thanks for all the great questions, and we hope that everyone has learned a new tip or trick. So let me just pop back to chat field. Okay, so I just see a question. Hi, Greg. The command chords in MIDI does not work. Maybe I need to enable something in the settings. All right, so let's say I'll just jump to a different project. All right, so I'm just going to select this particular event. I think I've even done it in the live stream today. So I'm going to make sure that the event is selected. And then when we go to chord track, we'll just say create chord events. And when we do that, that seems to work. But if we don't have, if you have just a track selected, it may not work. So let's give it a shot. Yeah, so make sure that the event itself is selected, and then so if that's not selected, it doesn't know where to look for the particular chords. So now when we come here, create chord events, it works kind of for me as expected. Let me know if you're doing it the same way. All right, so I see from Kevin, question, you said in the render as or in the audio mixdown or render as you can open in Wavelab 11 Pro when mixdown is complete in Cubase 12. So yeah, that's how it works. All right, just reading through comments. Sorry, my phone is blowing up today. All right, so to see, hi, installed Cubase 12 today, and it hangs on loading core Midi on startup. It suggested restarting the computer, but it did not help. Haven't been able to find a solution. Any tips? So I think some people I saw had just like an old Midi, like a, try disconnecting, so often it's going to be like I saw something on Facebook where someone had like just an old keyboard or some type of old keyboard that was just connected to the Mac, and that was causing the problems. So maybe try to, and it's going to be like a MIDI interface that's probably causing that problem. So maybe if you disconnect any of your MIDI controllers as you're booting and then connect them afterwards, you could probably isolate it doing it that way. Okay, so with that, we're right at 4 hours. So I'm going to wrap up. We'll look forward to seeing everyone on Friday's live stream. And if you want to submit questions in advance, you could send it to clubcubase at steinberg.de. And we look forward to seeing everyone on Friday's live stream. Thank you very much. And if you learned something new, make sure you do hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much. Goodbye.